All right. 2024, Week 10 podcast. Let's get into it. Last week we had the Viking versus Sacco. After they made a pretty significant trade with each other, they had some high-profile players going back and forth that they swapped and decided to play each other. Always weird to see that, but let's see how it turned out. No surprise in this matchup last week, I got the quarterbacks wrong. I have been wrong on Baker all year. He continued to roll. I thought he would fold. I just can't seem to nail any prediction on him. But I also had Dak as a top 5 quarterback, and I said there is no way T-Law breaks 15 points. Miss and miss. So T-Law actually ended the day above 20. Dak ended at 15. So totally missed that group, but I did nail the wide receiver group. Like I said, the Viking has managed to, again, build a great wide receiver group. He has a very good floor, but he also has a lot of potential upside in his group. And it hit. Going to the Sacco, Cameron has just gone full boomer bust, and Wicks and Worthy in that group, they combined for a total of -1 points. I didn't stutter. -1 points between both of them. So needless to say, his boom or bust group busted. And even a 20-point week out of Kelsey couldn't save our Sacco and make up for his terrible wide receiver group. So the Sacco comes out with a loss, and your commish comes out with another win on the season, bringing his record to 7-2 on the season. Damn you, SEMA. My only 2 losses this year. Anyway, however, the Sacco didn't walk away from this game empty-handed. No, he didn't. He traded with the Viking, but he traded him a spy. Right after trading Dak to the Viking, Dak sacrificed his hammy in order to bring the Sacco name to victory. He is sabotaging the Viking from behind the walls. The Sacco sent in a Trojan horse, and the Viking fell for it. So the Viking is down Dak after injury. So he is in a tough spot despite getting the win. Now, I know I've done multiple back-to-back team previews this year, and I keep saying I don't do that. I try to spice it up and give everybody a shot. But the Vikings get another preview. This week it's just the way the matchups worked out. For those of you who have not looked forward, the Sacco race is tight between Thunder and Firecrotch. Well, they play each other next week. So that will definitely be the game preview next week. And I try to make sure everybody gets at least 2 game previews on the year. So Vikings only had 1, so that brings me to analyze his game again this week. And, by the way, same for Chad, who he plays this week. So it just did kind of work out. It's also a close game. AI has it within just a few points, I think 5. So pretty good. And we get to analyze Chad's new team, Tank Dogs, because Chad got his love child back. He gets Tank Dell. Obviously, if you don't recognize this name, he was Tank Go Down because at the end of last year he had Tank Dell, who was lighting it up but got hurt. So renamed his team Tank Go Down, and now he is Tank Dogs. So let's get into it. The Tank, can he lead Chad to victory? Can he take on the antiquated swords of the Viking, get a win? Well, let's get into it. All right. Quarterback. We've got Daniel Jones and Russ on the Viking side. And for Chad, we have Drake May and CJ Stroud. Preseason, this seems like just a disgusting group. But let's get into it. Well, the Trojan horse is rearing its ugly head, just taking up that Sacco face right out of that horse belly and sticking it to the Viking. Instead of starting Dak, he gets to start Russell Wilson. Good job, Sacco. Luckily for the Viking, Russ is coming out of a bye week, and he's had 2 weeks to prepare for an average at best Washington defense. While their stats are getting better, I'm not so sure how good they are. Now, not to mention, he has a new toy named Mike Williams. Russ does. He was traded to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh has a very, very good rush defense, elite top 5 type of level, but their pass defense is bottom 10 this year. So, assuming Daniels is healthy, and I think I'm going to call kind of a sneaky shootout here. Or I'm sorry, assuming Russ and everybody's healthy, I think I'm going to call kind of a sneaky shootout here. I think Russ can kind of get it going this week, and I think there definitely could have been a worse replacement for Dak. Now you combine that with Daniel Jones. Now this guy's a total dud. I mean, literally less than 10 points multiple weeks, or he's a total stud with 30 points. So you combine that kind of boom and bust with what should be a pretty solid 4 for Russell, and the Vikings should get better production than most would think out of this group. I mean, if Daniel Jones can't get it done versus Carolina, I mean, he might get benched. So I got to imagine he has a good week. Now, Chad rolls out Drake May against the Viking, and we all know Steve is dying a little inside having to play against his own team's starting quarterback. Now, these two Patriot fans have something to be excited about, though. Drake May has been getting it done. He has had 20-plus points in 3 of 4 starts and 33 attempts or more in those 3 starts. So basically one bad game. It's too bad he runs up against the toughest defense, or fantasy defense, for quarterbacks this year in the Bears. Now, May's legs do make him a viable option every week. He does have a floor. Looks like he's running for about 30 yards. I think May has less of a chance to dud than, say, Daniel Jones. But I don't know that he has a ceiling this week. So Chad pairs his favorite Patriot, or new favorite Patriot, with his favorite quarterback from a year ago, C.J. Stroud. C.J. is coming off 3 games with 20 points, but he is still dealing with the loss of Nico and Diggs. Looks like Nico's not going to play. Obviously, if he does, a big plus for C.J., but right now I'm imagining that he doesn't. And honestly, this Texan offense just does not look like the same offense from last year. And it really is hurting Slowick's head coaching stock. I've heard the term fraud tossed around, so definitely not good at all. He's not adjusting. Now, given their offensive line has been very bad, but we will see. CJ should hopefully turn it around. But you'd think that this Detroit matchup is a good one and it should be high scoring. I mean, maybe, but that doesn't mean Stroud is going to be the one doing the scoring. Detroit is a run funnel defense, and Mixon has looked great. So that means, they obviously sell out the run to stop the pass. So I think Mixon could get the work, be successful, and we could see some points. So I don't think Stroud has any yardage in him this week. Maybe he gets lucky, gets a few touchdowns. I mean, that would be what Chad is hoping for. Some short routes and stuff. But I don't know who he's throwing them to. That's not really Dell's game. So I don't know. Not a lot of faith in CJ this week, despite the matchup. So Edge, believe it or not, I'm going with Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson. Never thought I would have said that in the preseason. So, I don't know. Someone just put me out of my misery now. That's terrible. But I am going with the Viking. All right. Moving on to running back. We have Breece and Monty versus Javonte Williams and Ramondre. Pre-draft, we were making the argument that Breece should be the number 1 overall pick instead of C-Mac. Well, Breece has been good, but he hadn't been that good. He's coming off back-to-back 10-point games. And coincidentally, those are the 2 games that Rodgers has actually looked alive and capable of putting something together. So is Breece going to be a big part of this resurging, Devontae Adams kind of led offense? I don't know, but I can tell you this week he will be, because he gets Zona, and they, at best, are a bottom 10 defense and allow the 7th most points to running back. So I don't know how Breece doesn't have a good game, and you pair that with Monty, who everybody knows I love me some Monty, but he has been, touchdown dependent. He has a solid 4, but he really doesn't have a huge upside. That upside is dependent on those TDs, so can he fall into the end zone against the Texans? Well, it's a 50-point over-under, So I think we can count on a TD out of him this week. So, Steve looking good there. All right, on the other side, we've got Chad. Javonte Williams and Ramondre. Yikes. This is just not a good running back group. If we have to take a look at this group with rose-colored glasses on, Ramondre has had back-to-back 20-point weeks. But I just don't think the game script here is in his favor. They're playing Chicago, like I mentioned above, with Drake May. I just don't think Drake May can blow up against this team, so I don't see like a ton of scoring opportunities. The Pats' defense has not been very good. I thought they'd be better coming into the season, but they're bad enough that Caleb should be able to move the ball. So I also don't see a game where the Pats get up and Ramondre gets like 20 carries. I just don't see a path for Ramondre having a big week. He'll get some usage, but I don't see any upside at all. The same is true for Javonte. He's been better lately, and he's getting more work, and he's proven to be a solid 3 to 4 catches every week, which I didn't think would happen. I thought Jaleel McLaughlin would really take all the work, but Javonte seems to be there to do it all back. The problem is he gets Kansas City. And like last year, all the talk, and I don't care what it is, but all the talk is about Mahomes. But it's the defense that's getting the wins in Kansas City this year, again. So I imagine KC shuts down Denver. So that means I think they shut down Javonte. Bo Nix is definitely a unique quarterback, though, similar to kind of early Josh Allen where he runs a lot. So maybe KC has a tough time, with a running quarterback. I mean, that seems like a stretch. So big edge here, I think, goes to the Viking. Easily the biggest edge of all the position groups. It is here for the Viking. Now, it wouldn't be that way every week, but the Viking comes out pretty big because of his matchups. Moving on to the wide receiver group, this also includes the flex because both teams started wide receivers. We have the Viking with Mooney, Neighbors, Justin Jefferson, and Calvin Ridley versus Tank Dell, London, and Jameson Williams. Now, for being a big, scary Viking, Steve sure does love him some diva wide receivers. This is 2 years in a row that the Viking has traded for top-flight receivers. It didn't work out last year, but could it work out this year? Well, like the running backs, it will this week. Another position group for Steve and yet another great set of matchups for him. Mooney gets the Saints. I don't care what the stats say that says they're middle of the road on pass defense. They're wrong. This team is falling apart. They just lost Lattimore. Could they get a post-coach firing bump? I mean, maybe. But they're playing Cousins, and he's playing great. I see no way Atlanta loses this game. I don't care if it's in New Orleans. That over-under is 46.5. Dude, run right now and go bet the over. Atlanta is scoring. So I'm going to guess that Mooney gets a part of that. All right. Now, since losing 2 offensive linemen, the Giants and Daniel Jones, they've struggled on offense to pass the ball. I think the offense is leaning, pretty heavily on their run game. Of course, that reason is Tyrone Tracy because he's amazing. But I actually think it's because they can't pass block. I mean, they just don't have the people up front to pass block. So that being said, they're playing the pathetic Panthers. So I don't see a world where Neighbors doesn't get 10 targets. And against this bottom dweller of a team, he'll do something with that. So Neighbors should have a good week. Similarly, Jefferson gets Jacksonville. And they get Jacksonville, and it looks like T-Law isn't playing. So you got a bad defense going up against a backup quarterback, and they're missing wide receivers. The Jags are just going to get rolled. I imagine Minnesota going far over their point total. The game total is 44, and I actually think I'd take the under because I don't know how the Jags score more than 10 points against a good mini defense. Maybe 13. So I think the only concern for Jefferson is that Minnesota gets out to an early lead, and they simply don't need to pass. So maybe his volume's down. Yeah, I mean that's tough. The last Viking to this party is Calvin Ridley, and since the bye, Ridley has received 8 targets every single week. He's definitely become the center point of the Titans' offense. But that's kind of like saying you're the pull-up in my center point of my workout plan. 100% of nothing, still nothing. I'm not doing any pull-ups. So I just don't have a lot of faith in Levis or Rudolph, particularly going up against a pretty decent defense. Ridley's best shot here is they get down early, and the Titans have to pass, and Ridley just simply racks up some, trash can volume PPR points, which actually seems pretty likely. But I'm not counting on a whole lot here. All right, let's move on. We're going over to Chad. Let's move over to the tank, baby. Tank Dell. Chad finally gets reunited with his long-lost love, and he is stacking his boy with C.J. Stroud. That's right. As you heard earlier, I'm a little down on Stroud. But that doesn't mean I am down on Dell. Now, I don't think Stroud is totally going to bomb. I don't see a blow-up coming, but I don't think he bombs. The Texans' offense is going to have to pass. Detroit's going to score. So, considering Tank might be the only healthy wide receiver, I think Tank PPRs his way into a great fantasy game. So, while Steve may have some great matchups, Chad's like, wait a minute, mine aren't bad either. So, he gets a soft Detroit pass defense for Tank, but he gets Tyreek up against the Rams. This is Tyreek's get-right game. A bottom 10 passing defense that he gets to play against. The Dolphin defense, while I know we rank better, we're certainly a bottom 10 passing defense also. And both of these offenses are kind of high-flying passing offense. There's a reason this game is the highest over-under on the week. If you're trying to trade for Tyreek, I recommend you do it now because this is his blow-up week. His price will go up next week. If he doesn't get it done this week, the Dolphins need to blow up this team. I mean, this is it. I mean, you got to put up some points if you're the Dolphins this week. Not that I think we have any chance at the playoffs, at least not any legitimate ones, but if you got anything, you got to show it here. So far so good with Chad. He's got his great matchups too. But how about we pass on to Jameson? So Jameson Williams, I've already mentioned Monty above. So for those who forgot, Jameson, prior to the suspension, 4 of his 5 games, 14 points or more, and 3 touchdowns. So Detroit just has an embarrassment of riches on offense. They're going to score. They can score 100 ways. Can I see Jameson getting a TD this week? Yeah, sure. I have no idea how to predict who's going to score in this Detroit offense. They can score anyway. So maybe it goes with Jameson this week. Now the Viking, he gets to roll out Mooney, while Chad gets to roll out Drake London. So they've got both receivers and the going up against NOLA, that bad defense I have already talked about. So while I expect Atlanta to score, could be either of these receivers. Could be both of these receivers. I thought Viking had some good matches, but Chad, this is a match made in heaven for you this week in terms of matchups. Both of these teams just rolling out these matchups. But if Chad has a shot to win this week, win this game, he needs the ball to bounce his way in this position group. He needs Steve to miss, and he needs to hit. That's Chad's path to victory. I'm still going to give Steve the slight edge, mostly because I'm hedging against London not playing. Even if London plays, I still probably give it to Steve, mostly because Jefferson at this point seems like he's got a 20-point floor, regardless of who he plays or what the game script is. But like I said, it ain't a big edge to Steve. I really like Chad's group this week. All right, tight end. Cole Kmet versus Dalton Kincaid. Boys, seriously, make a trade. Get a real tight end. This is embarrassing. I've got Kraft available. Give me an offer. All right, I'm rolling with Mandrews. Kraft is available. All right, not spending much time here. This is a trash panda group. Kincaid gets a bad ND defense, and he's getting a bunch of targets every week. We're talking like 7 to 10. He ain't doing much with them, but he's getting them. And that's a lot better than Cole Kmet's 1 target last week. Edge goes to Chad here. All right. So, can Tank lead Chad to the victory? I don't think so. Chad needs to improve this running back group in general to have a shot to win this year. I know Madison's, on bye and stuff, but it's a tough group. I think you make the playoffs, but it's a tough group to talk about winning the whole thing. On top of that, he happens to be going up against a team this week that just has amazing matchups. It's not going to surprise me at all if the Viking goes for 200 this week. It's just that type of week. So, tough week for Chad. I think it's further apart than the AI predicts. So, Steve, bring home a win for your Viking King, or don't come home at all to the motherland. I need a win out of you this week. All right, that's it for me, boys. Week 10 in the books. Peace out.